Great. Okay, so let's get officially started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. As I said, I'm impressed by the turnout, considering that it's holiday week, and I know people are busy. But very glad you could all be here, and people will probably continue to join us. So I'm Irene Scricky. I'm a volunteer with OPH, and my role here is just to moderate so that Marnie can focus and not have to monitor the chat and let people in and all that. So I'll just be here to kind of keep us moving. But we are joined, of course, by our trainer, Marnie, who has been, gosh, it's been 8 or 9 months, 10 months since you joined, right? Almost coming up on a year. Marnie is sort of on contract with OPH to provide training to fosters, adopters, whatnot. And one of the things she does, of course, is to do these calls. And we have recorded previous calls so that they can all be accessed. I will try to remember to put the link into the chat later where you can see the previous ones. But today's topic, it's the Rottweiler puppy. I love that puppy. One of the joys of doing video calls is you get to meet assorted dogs and whatnot during the course of the call. But tonight's topic is separation anxiety, one that is a big issue for if your dog has it, it's a really big issue. So we're delighted to have Marnie talk to us about that. So what we usually do is have her talk for a little bit about some strategies and ideas, and then we start to take questions either in the chat. You can tee up some in the chat, and then of course verbally later once we give Marnie a chance to do some initial talking. And then of course we are recording this so that we can later share this with others. So Marnie, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Irene. And yes, thank you everybody who came. I figured we'd just be by ourselves and we'd record it for everybody. I honestly didn't think anyone would come really tonight. So let me start by saying separation anxiety. It's one of those things where dogs are sort of born with the odds against them. They're born into a litter or as a singleton. They're born with another dog and they're just not prepared to be alone. Even though genetically we've bred them years and years to work with humans, they're programmed to want to be with humans. They're literally coded in the DNA now to want to be with us, right? Some of them want to be with other dogs, and some of them are fine alone, but most of them are unprepared for these large absences. And of course, when we're working with rescue dogs, they've bounced around or they've had a lot of changes, or we don't know their history or how they've been prepared in life for learning. So separation anxiety is something we as trainers see a great deal of after major changes. Major changes tend to just trigger it, even if it wasn't bad before. And like somebody was just saying in the chat, that dogs can have it for a very, very long time and then it can be re-triggered. It can be specific to a specific person leaving, or it could just be that people are gone, or they don't have another dog to keep them company that they take comfort from. So you've got all kinds of different variants of it, and sometimes it can be incredibly severe. But let me start with a few simple ways to boil it down. We've got, basically what we've got is we've overstretched the dog's tolerance and knowledge of how to cope and self-soothe. Self-soothing isn't really a technical term, but everybody kind of understands it. So it's a layman's term that everyone understands, but in behavior school, we don't really. Self-soothing, it's just coping. Adaptation is the formal clinical term. So they've got to have adaptation to periods alone. So we tend to set dogs up wrong, right? When we come home, we're exciting, or we let them out, we take them for a walk, we feed them out of their area. Everything interesting happens for a dog either outside or with their people. And like I said, sometimes with other dogs, but mostly with humans. I'd say 80% of a dog's need are met by humans. So suddenly being away from them, dogs are also control freaks. We know this, right? They like to control, they like to train us to get their needs met. They like doing that. They're bred for it. So if we're suddenly gone, it's a shock to the system, and it causes like this PTSD response, literally a cascade sequence of catastrophic feelings inside the dog that they can't manipulate their environment or people to get their needs met. They're completely isolated and they're just not genetically set up for it. So we really, really have to boil it down to what the dog can tolerate. Also, we have to start focusing on different things to set the dog up to succeed more when they are alone. So what I tend to do with dogs, I bring dogs in every week pretty much, and they start whining and crying. You know, I bring in new dogs all the time, and I've got it down. You'll probably hear I've got 7 dogs around me right now, and some of them do have meltdowns because I rotate and they don't get to be with the family or be with me all the time. I start out giving them a lot of structures that I'm not involved in. So I'll do a lot of chewing. I will exercise them, of course, and I'm kind of involved in that, but they're sniffing, they're independent, they're sort of enjoying themselves. I'm not directly involved. I do a lot of long line work and letting them sniff and find things, relaxation, but I'll put them away for long periods to chew or get used to being by themselves so that when I'm with them, I'm like a key resource, and what I want is something they're highly motivated to do for me. It's just how I have to set it up. So I keep myself really busy in chores, and when I stop and pay attention to the dog, they're doing something calm. So if you come home and you're paying attention to the dog when they're crazy, it really does add up. You've really got to not pay attention to the dog when you're around a lot. Pay attention to when they settle. When they settle, add chews, add treats. This is just even on a bed before you've put them away by themselves. Start really paying attention to when they calm down in the presence of other people, when you leave the room, when you go to the bathroom, and start timing how long they can be alone before they have a response, because you really want to keep it under threshold. If they can tolerate this, you really want to keep it this, and just regularly flex in between how long you're gone for. You want to leave the room, you want to set them up for small increments, and you want to start adding in things to chew. You got to get your dogs chewing. You got to feed them out of Kongs or puzzle toys or paper bags, or get these Himalayan yak chews, put cottage cheese in a Kong. Really get creative with things that getting them to chew and explore puzzle toys. And what you're doing is, when you're leaving, you first of all, you get them used to chewing when you're around, and then you start giving them to chews when you just go to the bathroom or you start cleaning and you're ignoring them, right? You got to teach dogs to be ignored. And the way you do that is give them something really interesting to do. Exercise them for like 30 minutes before you start leaving them. If you already know you're on the threshold of anxiety, you want to exercise them and start leaving them when you know they're going to take a nap or chew. They really just get left too long and they have a need. What happens is, chemically they start panicking because they were left too long and they had a bathroom need, or a comfort company need, or a chewing need, or just sheer boredom, or stiff and cooped up. Oh, hello, darling. Oh, so they get a panic attack in their body, so that now it starts to be associated with when you leave at all. So what happens is, they're ticking along fine, and then you start making what are called these departure cues. You get your keys, right? You get your coat on. Just let me make sure the puppy's not chewing anything I don't want. Are you chewing something I don't want you to be chewing? Oh, not you. Never. Okay, she's behaving. I put tests down for her to learn to not chew and chew on the right thing, but sometimes they're hard. They're hard tests. So I'm going to remove this one. That's too hard for you, darling. Let's make it easier. So they start seeing our cues of when we're going to leave, and they associate that chemically in their bodies with the distress they felt at being alone too long and their needs not being met. So it's not a behavioral training. It's not a discipline training. To my mind, separation anxiety is different than a lot of other behaviors. It's such a chemical response in the body. It's such a physiological response that it becomes almost medical. And that's why a lot of separation anxiety is treated by medicine, because it is a chemical response. It does become a medical response, and stress in the body on separation anxiety can really mess up the dog mentally in so many other ways. So you got to start the best way. And I've seen beginners do this really, really well. Oops, that better not be my glasses. The best way is teaching them to settle while you're there. So you're gonna, really bring them on a leash to a bed and start dropping kibble or chicken or warm hamburger meat on the bed. Any thoughts they get about settling down, calming, chewing something in your presence without needing you to touch them, you just toss something and toss another treat, toss another chew stick, toss another, and then you get up and you leave them for a little bit, and you develop. You have a barrier, a gated room, so that you can just walk out and do the chores, or you just start cleaning in the room. You start taking your attention away when they're settled, and you've got that routine where they're really comfy, and then you start moving away, doing chores, keeping busy. The big thing is, when you do leave them, you need to keep it under threshold, or you need to have somebody come check on them, or pet sitter or daycare if it's appropriate, or really make sure they're exercised so that they can sleep, because this can be so distressing for them. And really, you can get a sardine and freeze it in a Kong. You just got to get super creative. There's so many canine enrichment Facebook groups and Google things out there. There's YouTube videos on what to do for homemade enrichment. You really got to get that crate or that room. I tend to bring my dogs in a room. For my personal dogs, for this new puppy, she's coming in my bedroom more and more, and I teach her to settle while I'm in the bedroom. I make sure she's got chews. Then I start leaving and cleaning, and at first, like, she'd scratch the door a little bit, and I would only go in and out. I wouldn't stay out too long. I'd come back in and I would just ignore her. You don't want to pay attention at departure or arrivals. You just don't. Just let them out, keep moving, go outside. I don't know what you're asking for, but you just used your foot. See if you can wait a bit longer for the toilet. Pretty sure you're good for a minute. Wait. If she keeps giving me the signal, I may have to move us on the road, and you'll just bear with me. Because I'm not going to ignore a puppy for too long, but it's asking to go out. Good dog, settle. So you really want to keep these arrivals and departures no fuss. Make sure you move. Don't try and pet the dog or calm the dog down or talk to the dog. Just let the dog out and move to the bathroom area. Just be looking. You could drop things on the floor for them to sniff, so they're not focusing on you and jumping up, because any touch you give them during that moment solidifies the fact that it was you. It's like a little reach trauma bonding. Like, they're like, you left me, and you're touching them and talking to them, and it just perpetuates the cycle. So you really want to just be too busy to deal with it until they're calm. But when they're calm, never be too busy. You've got to pay attention. The biggest thing about separation anxiety is the things that are missed. You really got to pay attention to when they're being calm and settling, and make sure you can move away without them getting up and following you, or put a gate on the door so that you can step in and out. Just start cleaning, start doing things, start working, and ignore them and build it up in the room that they're going to be in when you do leave them. Start desensitizing them to cues of leaving. Go settle, no sniffing. Just go settle. I understand you, but you're going to wait. We're going to stretch your tolerance for waiting. So you're gonna, what was I just saying, Irene?
I was busy posting a link to all the videos. So you were saying they need to be set once give them attention when they're settled, so that they,
Yes, that's it.
yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
So they understand that they get attention is coming. They don't have to panic for attention, right? Because what they're learning with separation anxiety is that the distress and panic brings someone to them. They just can't cope. I just want everyone in here to know it's a coping mechanism they don't have. They're not. It's not okay. It's a medical response. It can be really serious. So we do really want to pay attention to the calm and go over and pet them and add in chews and add in Kongs. And then when we leave, like a baby gate or they're in a crate, you pop them in the crate and you just do some cleaning, and then you let them out. You ignore them when you let them out. You ignore them when you put them in. You go over when they're settling in the crate or in their room. You toss in extra things. You go over and pay some attention. You might get them out because they were calm, so that they learn they don't have to build up this panic. And you'll get these departure cues desensitized and even counter conditioned. But what that means is we'll start to get like, oh, look at that face. Just look at that face. We'll start to get like keys and get a jacket on, and I'll sit down. I'll get keys, jacket, go do some cleaning and not go out at all. I'll pick up the leash, I'll put it down. You know, I'll desensitize things that get dogs hyped to think they know what's coming. Dogs really do like a routine, but I teach dogs to depart from routines. I'm the anti-routine person. I mean, there's certain things that I do on routine, so they have potty down. Like I feed, water, and potty on a routine, so their bladders can get really tight control because they know it's coming, and I never leave them longer than I know they can hold it. I start stretching it a little bit if I have to leave longer, but it's really about any problem you have with a dog, you've got to break it into bite-sized chunks. You've got to make it more manageable for the dog, and less of a mountain to climb and more of a little tiny hill that they can succeed and win. So you really just need to practice departures while you're home, and you really need to practice giving them stuff to chew and paying attention when they're calm and settle. Make sure you're moving, and just go out to the store, go around the block, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Keep them not knowing how long you're going to be gone. If you're having a problem with separation anxiety, it's about coming back and them not having wound themselves up. You can put things that smell like you. I mean, that's why a bedroom can be a really great place, because it smells of your resting body smells, and it's got, you know, all the comfort of sleeping and resting in a bedroom. So I like to use that for dogs that are really anxious, because it's just a very soothing place. But you can drape your clothes nearby so they can't chew them, but they can smell you. You really want some sound on, but very gentle classical music. They make these music CDs for dogs. You know, music for dogs. You can just Google soothing music for dogs. I forget the name of it, but there's loads of different ones. But there's good pitches and frequencies for dogs that's soothing. You can get plug-in adapters that produce a pheromone. You can get collars, adaptil collars that produce a pheromone. You can try a thunder shirt. They either help or they don't. It's 50-50 in my book, but when it does help, it's good, because that's acupressure. It's like a hug. You can put one of those hard discs you can get for dogs that you warm up and cover with something. You can get a clock nearby with a ticking sound that can be soothing. There's so many things you can do. So, you know, there's loads of generic stuff on. I was looking around before this talk today of what is out there, because a lot of these problems I notice, there's so much conflicting information out there, but what I've distilled it down to is you really need to break it down so that when you're home, you can practice departures in small increments that don't arouse the panic, but get them used to it, and teach them that calm pays. And really make sure, if you've got a dog with separation anxiety, you really want to exercise them and then put them away with a chew, and then go back before they're having a problem and get them out again, take them out again, or give them a chew and then put them away. Leave them a little bit longer, vary it. Go in and out of the room that they're in. Make sure the cues that would send them into an anxiety. You can get these cameras that you can talk to the dog. I have never used them. I don't know if they help or not. You can get these remote pet dispensers that you can drop treats to your dog, so you can check in on your dog if you don't have someone that can check in. But I think it's really important to try and have things that break up the dog's day, because they are left too long sometimes. We lead very busy lives, so you got to make sure they're really getting enough needs met outside of the time you're away, so that when you're away, make sure you're not giving them all the food and all the chews and all the fun stuff when you're there, because then what's left when you're gone? You know, you've really got to make sure that there's something that they look forward to. I use, I'll get these frozen shin bones from the grocery store. When I'm home, I give them the marrow bones with the meat in it. Once they're chewed out and they're empty, I'll fill them with cottage cheese and freeze them, or peanut butter. And I've got the shin bone. She's chewing one right now, and that's because I ignored her and I didn't respond to her cues. She knows to go on her bed and chew, and that I'll go get her and take her out. She's more likely to get me to go do something with her when she's on her bed chewing, because that tells me she's awake and she's not sleeping and she's got needs that need to be met. But when she's calm, she's training me to pay attention. I've made sure I'm training that in. She was gently nibbling on something that I left as a test, but she's now chewing on her own bone in the absence of that stimuli. So we definitely want to make sure we're doing everything we can so they've got cues that pay without them going into full panic mode. And for more serious training separation, you can email the OPH training. You can tell me your situation, or let's take some questions and see what we've got, Irene. Let's apply this knowledge.
Yep, and let me just, I'll start off with a question just so people can gather themselves. We do have one in the chat. And also we have an adopter, actually adopter foster volunteer reference checker for OPH who joined, whose dog has a very major case of separation anxiety, Christine, who has actually tried probably every strategy, and they've managed, but she may be able to also comment on, again, it's it can be a different mix that works. But I think the question I will ask is an obvious one, which is that the way to deal with separation anxiety, as you suggested, takes time. It takes, gradually extending the time. And for people who do adopt and then have to work, or foster and have to work, they often don't have that luxury. So I think people are often stuck having to do kind of a cold turkey thing, and it's difficult. So any thoughts on that?
Yes, definitely. So if you just got a dog, or you're just jumping right in and you've got to leave, you really need to make sure that when you are coming home, you aren't paying attention to those arrivals and departures, that you're just moving. You're very, very busy. And just that night, even though the dog's been alone and sort of panicking, you're not calming them and reassuring them when you're clinging to them, that when they settle down on their own, you go over and you offer, you see if they want to cuddle and want to touch, let them calm down and pay it, because that teaches them that calm pays, and you're home, you're just home. So you don't have to like book a week off work. I would, for a new dog, I spend time setting it up so I can go to the grocery store, they understand. Then I brought the cues in that mean I'm leaving, and I've rotated everybody, and they all know they're going to be left. They don't know how long for, but they know they're just fine and their needs are met. And when I come back, I just let them out. I don't give them cuddles and attention. Then I either walk them or I let them in the yard, and then I bring them in and I give them something to do. And as they start to be calm and they're not like following me everywhere and mugging me, I start paying attention to that. That's the biggest one that you can do, even no matter what your routine or schedule is. You got to just like keep going, then notice the dog doing something calm. Really pay attention to that. It will change your life. I promise you. You've really got to pay them when they're calm. Now, you don't always want to touch a dog don't touch a dog that's sleeping or resting. Don't go up and rile them up, but just add something. Unless you can offer it, you can sit a little bit of ways on the floor and see if they want that cuddle, and really massage them and soothe them. You can offer them, add in a Himalayan yak cheese or a chew or a Kong, something, feed them their dinner when they're calm. Look for the cues of calm and give them something good. Maybe don't just feed them their dinner when they're all anxious. Wait till they're settling and they're calming down. Really make sure, if you've got to dive in, that you really exercise them before you leave. It's just not fair to leave a dog that needs the bathroom. So really give them those long sniffy walks where you're not in a rush. You really want to let them use their bladder and sphincter, and really try and train them to a routine of going either before the walk or at the end of the walk. Try and get it so you really know they've eliminated, because those are hard urges and they cause panic. Dogs that are chewing a crate or something are really having a bad response, and you've just got to dial it down. You've just got to break it down into chunks. Leaving them cold turkey won't work. It'll just get worse and worse. Next question.
So Simone, you had a question. Do you want to ask it verbally? It's probably better than my reading it, though I can give you a second to unmute if you want.
I think I've unmuted. Yes, thank you. So I've tried daycare and boarding a couple of times, and I always get sent away straight away, sort of being told that, I'll make it worse if I stay. And my dog's usually going berserk at that point, and I feel horrible, and I don't know, and she just doesn't like it any better any second time that I go back. So I feel like I'm overstressing her, and I don't know what to do about it.
Yes, I hear both sides, because I've opened and run 4 doggy daycares, so I know, everybody's always like, we've got a better chance. Even in vet clinics, sometimes we're like, we've got a better chance when the owner goes, and other times they haven't been introduced. They don't feel secure in the introduction, and it's too soon to just rip you guys apart. So for me, I look for a doggy daycare where I can hang out in a lobby or an office and just get them interested and happy. Because to me, if they're not happy when they're dropping off, then that trauma of dropping off or arrivals, picking up or dropping off is too much. I always look for dogs, like when my clients come to, I only do a few doggy daycares because I don't like too many, but when they come, their dog's still happy to stay with me. They're not like usually I've got one client that has a dog that's, will whine, but he's gotten better at, like, he'll still do stuff with me when his owner's there. He'll say hi to his owner and then he'll come right back to play. So for me, it's a big indicator. I have fired one client this last year, and she was an amazing client, paid really well, was regular. But I told her, your dog is too anxious when you drop off and too anxious when you pick up. I won't do it, because to me, the trauma is just too much. So unless you can hang out, and I would find one where it's just really important for the dog to be sniffing and curious before you leave. Otherwise, those two traumas are just going to make it worse, I think, because it's a chemical response. And the more the chemical stays in the body, the more you're having the expression of the behaviors. Does that make sense? Not all behaviors are a chemical response, but separation anxiety, it's like a car crash. It floods the body with chemicals, and it's not a good feeling for the dog. It's acute distress. So sometimes it's just rip off the Band-Aid and the dog's fine. If they're saying the dog's totally fine, they're sending you videos of the dog being absolutely fine the second you're gone, and the dog's fine once you've picked them up. Is that the case, though? When you pick them up, are they calm, or does it take a while for them to settle back down?
So the first time, she had jumped a 10-foot fence and escaped before I even left the office. So that wasn't so good. Unfortunately, we got her back. And then, the other time I tried her, she seemed very, actually, she's boarded twice. And the first time was actually okay, because again, similarly to what you're saying though, I was able to walk down with her. They let me stand there while she met the handler. They made me stand there while she sniffed around the yard. And she seemed better when I picked her up. But then when I tried this last one, I moved states. She just seemed uncomfortable when I dropped her off. They didn't send me, there was no video option. And I felt horrible. It gave me a horrible feeling.
Yeah, if they can't send you video, sorry to jump in there, but I'm like, if they can't send you video, I don't like what I'm hearing.
Gotcha. That's good. No, it's good that I know to ask for that now. So that's
if they can't show you that your dog's settled and happy, then you're making it worse. And not every people can't just take your money. I used to I've managed doggy daycares too, and I'm like, you guys are just taking money to torture dogs. This isn't okay. And I was like, I tried with the CEO to get him to change his policies. It's like, you can't take everybody's money. Some dogs aren't a fit. And it's cruel to the other dogs, and it's cruel to them, and it's cruel to the owners, because they're getting back a dog that's now hypersensitive, hypervigilant, hyper-aroused, and they're flooded, and now they're more prone to sensitivity about being left at all. So it's just going to make all your behaviors worse. So just be careful who you leave your dog with.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Pet sitters too. Pet sitters are good because it's a quieter home environment, and they'll cuddle and get to know your dog, and you can spend that 5 or 10 minutes, maybe find a private pet sitter that's only got 1 or 2 clients like I do. I only take 1 or 2 a day, because I want them in my home. I want them so happy to come that this is their home from home, or it's not worth it for me.
So how do you vet those people to make sure that you're comfortable with them? Is it going and staying for a bit the first time? It's hard to find yellow pages and figure that
it's just call around pet sitters and go, my dog has some separation anxiety. Are you familiar with allowing the dog to get used to the place before I leave, and then sending me some videos or pictures to show that they're okay? And if they're not, I'm sorry, that's the minimum standard for me. I can't even fathom somebody not being willing to show you your dog's okay. That's just not okay.
Yeah, and because she's an escape artist, it stresses me out because I know what she's capable of.
Yes.
But that's awful.
And if it's not helping her, then don't take her. Right? As awful as that is, maybe get someone to come and let her out at lunchtime, and pay a home sitter to come to your home.
Yeah, because she's good at home. She's actually got really good about being left at home.
Yep, and it'll make her worse. In the wrong place will make her worse, and undo all that. So not worth it. Not worth it. My opinion.
I feel I have an urge. I have an urge to make a public service announcement here, especially since Kay's on the line. But we're both involved, especially Kay. I'm a minor player in lost dog work for OPH, helping to find dogs who are lost, like the one that Kay, not the one sitting on Kay's lap, but there's another dog to the side. That's her personal dog. And we do see stories including a recent lost OPH dog of, dog sitters who you tell them the dog's an escape artist, or even if you don't know that, and sitters, sometimes you just got to really emphasize the importance that I think when a dog's in a strange place too, they may be more likely to try to run away.
Absolutely.
Because they don't know where they are, they don't know where you are, and so you can never do too much to prevent lost dogs, because finding them can be really difficult. The one that's off screen with Kay was loose for 5 months before OPH was able to trap her, as we said earlier in the call. Anyways, okay, so there's no other chat questions. So who else would like to ask something? Go ahead and, I guess, jump in, hopefully one at a time. Is anyone else dealing with separation anxiety dog?
Well, so I'll ask a question. So they just got blood work back on Blackwater Falls Anna, the one that was lost, and they're thinking of doing Reconcile for her medication wise. Is that a good option for her?
It's usually a good place to start. The one I don't like to start, I don't like Prozac. It's very specific and it's for very specific use. So I say that's a last resort. Reconcile is a good starting place. But like I said, if you can do more of these, is she a real physical dog? Does she like a lot of physical contact?
Well, so this is the first week I've had her. So she was gone. So I've only had, so she's still kind of adjusting. So she's becoming more and more wanting your touch and your pets.
Yes.
So yeah, I think she really will be.
That's what I get these gut flashes, and I just got this gut flash. So have you tried a Thunder shirt?
I haven't tried what?
A Thunder shirt.
No, not yet.
Okay, they're 50-50. It's either helps or it doesn't help. But if you do it when you're home and she's sitting on the couch, it conditions the feeling of relaxation. So then when you put her away in the crate, you don't start putting it on when you put her in the crate. You start putting it on when you're about to do a cuddle session or a massage session. Have you got her chewing yet? Is the second one?
No, she has not started chewing.
See, there's your problem. So we got to get her, like, hold a Kong with some warm hamburger in it, a really soft Kong, or I don't know what size dog she is, but warm hamburger, cottage cheese, sardine and some cottage cheese. Just mess around with it, but squeezed cheese, liver paste. I've never met a dog that doesn't eat liverwurst. That's what I use for my really stubborn pill takers. But so I'm careful because I have a plethora of resources that I'll use, but I will get that dog chewing. I will, because if they can't spend 3 hours a day chewing, they're not living the best life. It's just my opinion. Dog needs to chew a lot more than people think. If you're having any kind of issue, chewing is one of the first things. And then exercise. What kind of exercise? She's
terrified of being outside. Absolutely terrified.
Okay. So inside exercise, flirt pole inside, fetch inside, frisbee inside, and then just go out the door and drop warm hamburger and then come back inside. Or go out the door if that, we don't want to poison the hamburger by making her terrified and then her not being hungry, but just go out the door, come back in and feed hamburger. And then go out the door, come back in, make it really tiny micro doses. So, because I'll tell you, half of that fear is the anticipation of actually going through that door. And get her sniffing when she gets outside. If you can get something stinky, cat food smeared, I make a stink fest outside for scared dogs. So if you can get them in the nose, the mind goes away, right? So I just, on that step, I will just get them smelling stuff and then come back in. So they're going out for scent garden enrichment. Like I create a scent garden on my step. It will change the dog's physiological response to the fear stimuli if we experiment and get it right. These are really simple things to do. And you just do 5 minutes. It's not a lot to do, but you really want to get that dog chewing. I'll tell you that's the big one.
Okay. Yeah, she's just starting to open up now. So she was literally caught 7 days ago. So she's just starting to open up and kind of come out of her shell. So hopefully she'll start doing that soon then.
Yes, she's probably got agoraphobia from the flooding of being out there. So you really need to get it over going through the door. It's the door response, and knowing that she'll come back in really quickly, that she just gets to sniff and process. And if you sit down, if you go out and you just sit on the step, just for just 30 seconds of the dose of that chemical feeling, and then back inside to safety, and see if she can eat. If she can't eat, she's having way too much of a chemical response. So we're just going to have to break it down even more. But if you can get her sniffing and following a trail outside, and then follow a trail back inside, you'll take away the anxiety completely. With anxious dogs, if I get their heads down, get them sniffing and get them following something and engaged in something, or following a ball, or like whatever they're really into, just get them focused on that. Go outside for a little bit, then come back in. It's going in and out. That transition of just the chemical response is really big, because she's probably had some agoraphobic responses to being out.
Yeah, they couldn't get her to go into the trap with all this, the food scent. They even used ribeye, and she wouldn't go into the trap. So she's gonna be a tough cookie, this one. So we'll see. We'll give those, the chewing thing will start.
Yeah, just try keep me posted, because that's where I'd start, and I'd see what I have. And if you can get any little video clips, I'll be able to get an idea of what will work better. But indoors, play ball, play tri-ball, play nudging balls through cones, or finding things under cones. Get her doing something inside so confidently that you can do it at the door, and then just open the door, and you're not even trying to take her out. You just, can she do it through the door, spit it back in, and then all the rewards for coming back in, so that she can like dart outside and go, I'm confident for a second, back in, and I'm being rewarded. Make it games.
Okay.
Games change brains.
So she may yet need a little bit of time. I mean, she's only been trapped less than a week, so she's still in the like, whoa, decompression mode. But
yeah, she is, absolutely. But we don't want to leave it too long, because she'll get stuck in that fear.
Yeah.
I'd start pushing a tiny little bit now.
Well, she literally at the beginning of this was just starting to play with my personal dog, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I want to be videotaping this, but I'm watching this. So she was literally just starting to play. So it's a big step right now.
That's a big step.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And then she'll follow the dog out, hopefully, once that gets.
Yeah, that's my goal.
Her confidence inside, and just pushing it a tiny bit. Just go to the door and feed her, and then come away, or go to the door and play. Any tiny, just looking for tiny responses of joy and confidence and trust.
Easy. Sorry, it's the challenge of so Jean, who is a thank you. That's I think that's all really helpful. Jean, who is a foster, has a question about Naya. By the way, Jean, I saw Naya. If I did not have a foster of my own, I would have fostered her. She is so cute. Do you want to ask verbally?
Sure. Thank you. So this is really my only 4th day. I picked her up Friday night, and she has no interest in chewing. She has access to many options.
Yeah.
If I stuff a Kong, she'll lick it out, but not chew it.
Okay.
But she does have the shelter record said she had a broken tooth, and my farm says it looks like it's missing. And we tried to take a photo of it, but she didn't want us to go near her mouth.
Gotcha.
So we backed off.
Okay. So we need soft chews. Yeah. So what we need to do is hold something soft and get her chewing it out of our hands, like maybe the yak cheese, because that's fairly softish. I'm just trying to think off my top of my head. A frozen sardine, just anything interesting. It could be a Brussels sprout, it could be a piece of apple, but you hold it and you get them chewing it, and you pet them while they chew it. And that's the best way to that's how I get puppies chewing. Just think creatively, maybe a little bit of frozen yogurt, or some pumpkin mixed with something, and you just freeze it in a little shape and make a little blob, or anything, or you take a chew object and rub it with chicken, and you just hold it. But you want something like maybe a greenie, or something softer, that's easier, that's not too hard. Something, the bully stick, the no rawhide bully sticks. I never use rawhide. I'm never ever talking about rawhide. It's just too dangerous. So I could jerky, dried jerky strips, just things that are delicious that you really try a little frozen shin bone with the marrow in it. And you can defrost it and let it lick and try it. But I like them frozen because I tend to not get diarrhea or make a mess. But just hold something and get it chewing, because that's a really big step to dogs soothing themselves. If they don't have chewing, they're thinking. So it's really an anti-thinking, anti-sniffing, chewing, sleeping. Those are all massive, and dogs are overstimulated a lot of the time. So we really need those calming activities, or we're kind of behind the curve and we don't have a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like they really need those calm down things.
She's really come a long way. I mean, originally she was, Velcro at my side, 3 days straight. And today was the first day that she actually came and lay down here in her den where her crate is on the bed. And let me be on my computer in the kitchen. So that was pretty amazing.
Great. See, that's huge. A snuffle mat you could put near her spot. You could put a little snuffle mat, and you just put something interesting in there, like pieces of cheese, or I get so creative. I'm so silly. I go nuts, but I'll do whatever, but there's so many millions of things that I'll try. So I'm never lacking for something. But if you get a little snuffle mat, because independence, your vibe is obviously very relaxed and laid back, and you're comforting, and she's being able to predict where you'll be. And dogs need to be able to predict what's happening to relax. That's really what they need, and they need to know their needs are going to be met during the times that they're alone. So
yeah, thank you. She's wonderful, really. And
I'm so happy for her.
Thank you.
Everybody here, like everyone's so great. It's so lucky for these dogs. Like they had nothing before you guys. They had absolutely nothing.
She was starving, ribs, and just awful. So underweight.
Is she going to be a foster fail, Jean?
No, actually there's a doctor who wants to come meet her on Christmas Eve. So
quickly. Wow.
Serious adopter, and she's heartworm positive, but this woman has had a heartworm positive dog before and been through it all. So it sounds like a perfect match. And then I'll be ready to foster the next one.
Wow. That's amazing. That's why I love OPH. It's really foster run. It's really the fosters that make this whole thing possible. So that makes me love this organization, because you're dealing with normal people trying to discover dogs, what home they need. And we've seen that some environments, it doesn't matter what the person does, it's just not the right environment for that dog. You got to change the environment. Sometimes it's not a match. It's not sometimes it's the person and not the environment. So, there's all kinds of different, but we don't know without the fosters, we don't know what the dog needs. So it's amazing to see everybody turn up to these and educate themselves. But chewing is savior. So really try and think outside the box. My homework for everybody here is to really think, what will my dog chew? You don't want to know the stuff I use. I teach my dogs to not eat stuff. I give them so many different things to chew. They're never attached to really eating and gulping anything. And I will use all kinds of crazy stuff, but just for a few minutes for novelty, just to give them something to do. But really do Google. There's so many things out there. You could email me, and when I'm thinking about it, I could write a whole list down. But I have so many crazy things. So maybe you don't want my list, but but I think outside the box all the time, because I'm a trainer, right? And that's all I do. And money wise, I have to be really creative, but I will create all kinds of crazy stuff, and I just get them exploring with their mouth, because that builds self-coping mechanisms. It's such a useful behavior. I don't want a dog that's Velcro on me if I'm rotating between 7 or 8 dogs and I'm training on emails and calls all day. I need them to just be self-sufficient and chill. So right now I've got the young puppy who's learning here. I've got a baby gate here, and then I've got a border collie here, and they're just learning to settle. I take these shin bones and I refill them. See, she's got some orange peel I gave her to explore it. I will give her tissues. I will give her Gatorade bottles, and I'll put some kibbles in there, because I'm teaching her not to chew stuff up. I've already taught her what to chew up. So these, you can fill them. Look at her face. You can fill them and they can empty them out again. You can refreeze it, and then they'll just self-soothe with that. You want to take it to your bed? Are you sleepy? You're too sleepy to think. You want to go to bed? You're a good girl.
Arnie, I wonder,
Yes, go ahead.
it's interesting hearing you talk about how to get a dog to chew for Jean's sake, when I'm sure there's a lot of folks, maybe not on this call, but certainly we've seen other adopters with dogs who are chewing everything, and we need to figure out how to teach them not to chew. So I wonder, that may be a topic for a future call. I certainly had fosters where, you had to be watching, they had to be either crated or you had to be watching them every minute for all kinds of items, from the most mundane to the most valuable, which would get my second foster ate my son's retainer, which is actually a very common thing, but a few $100 to replace. So maybe we can, if people don't have questions about that now, we could add that to the list for a future call.
Definitely, definitely. Because it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous when they're gulping. Just don't take things out of dogs' mouths. Trade. That's my biggest one. Mouth. Always trade. Trade. Have something better to give them. Be ready. Drop it and then pick it up. Just try not to compete. You train dogs to chew things by taking them out their mouth, because dogs can only explore with their teeth, and if they want to keep something, they have to swallow it, because we're always taking it away. So I can't, by the time I'm done with the training, I can just tell the dog, drop it, and they'll spit it out so fast that I don't, and I can take something away, because they've had so many trades that one takeaway won't bother them. But you really don't want to teach a dog to compete with you for a resource. That's a very, very negative trait. And it's the most common thing I see people do is grab things, but he's putting his mouth on everything. Get a bucket of things he can put his mouth on and start handing them to him before he's getting, you got to get ahead of it, not behind it. So just throw that out there for right now, since you brought that up.
Yeah, that's interesting. My dog has taken to snacking on wood chips from mulch as we walk.
Yes.
And I try to keep her away from mulch, because I don't want to be constantly distributing treats when she's eating mulch, but I can think about how I can apply your ideas to, and sometimes I try to.
We'll do a leave it in that too then, Irene. Will you remind me if I don't remember? We'll do I think that's right, because leave it is a part of it, of what not. I will train them to leave a certain substance, so I can start throwing the things they used to eat down on the ground, and they'll leave that one and chew the other things. You have to have a really bulletproof leave it. And that you're not verbally spewing at them all the time, that they know, they self-identify what pays. So dogs that like wood, I'll get a stick and I'll usually hold the stick and really get them into chewing an organic stick, and I'll carry it with me and I'll whip it out, and then I'll be like, I'll walk past a few pieces of mulch and I'll be like, ta-da, you walked past a few, and a little bit, and I'll get the sticky out, and then I'll feed some beef. So I'll massively pay the leaving of those few pieces of mulch. But if you go to a place where there's a ton of mulch, there's the sniffs underneath, all that earth and that organic smell, and just the feeling of the crunchies in their mouth. I get real creative up here. But once you've done it, they'll always leave mulch alone. But you might teach them to dig for the soil. There's all kinds of different stuff to do. It's just about being creative. Dogs is just about being creative, setting up a routine that succeeds for you, being ahead of the problem, and teaching dogs to self-soothe so that you can have off time where they're not just panicking when you're out of their way. Those panic attacks dogs go through, they're brutal. They're really brutal. A lot of dogs bounce around because of separation anxiety. It is the reason a lot of our dogs end up here, because in a home, they were just left too long and they weren't taught to cope. So teaching a dog to cope with being alone is probably one of the most fundamental things a foster can do.
So let's see if there's other questions. Otherwise, I'll talk about eating wood chips all evening, because it's a very compelling topic for my dog. Does anyone else want to ask questions about, and we can spread out, we only have about 10 more minutes, but we can spread out a little bit on separation anxiety too. Or do people want to share any strategies? And Christine, I know you have been through the ringer on separation anxiety.
Yeah, let's hear from you, Christina. What's worked for you?
Yeah, so we've tried a lot of different things. Part of the issue is that both of my dogs have separation anxiety. It's been a real challenge. We started doing more the exposure therapy, leaving for small bits of time.
Yes.
And that really worked well if you can do it.
Yes.
I did that a lot with my first dog, and tried it some with my second. The second was harder because he had to be crated.
Okay.
Most trainers recommend that you don't crate dogs with separation anxiety if you don't have to.
Possible. Right. Mhm.
So now that he's older, he doesn't have to be crated.
Right.
And now I'm trying to just leave them for different amounts of time. And I'm also using trazodone if it's going to be more than a couple of hours.
Yes.
And that's to really help them.
Yes. Yes, just for the
And
ones
Marty,
that
just
it's
so
little-
you know, yeah,
Mhm.
just as context, Christine's first dog is a
Yeah.
Daisy dog who is
Oh.
actually more shy than Kuno, probably, like
Yes.
extremely afraid. And she
Yes.
lives in an urban environment, very urban environment, but Christine has managed to
Yeah.
manage,
Wonderful.
which is extraordinary.
Christine's special.
And I'm so grateful that she did. Then adopted a second
Yeah.
very outgoing, bouncy little dog from
Yeah.
Tennessee, who's a
Yeah.
handful. Um,
Of eating mulch, yes.
yeah.
He enjoyed it well.
Enjoy the mulch. Oh, that's
Yeah.
too funny. That's too funny. Yeah. So with your dogs, because they're both, do they both hear each other and compound it, or?
I actually, because I worked with the Daisy dog for a while before I got the second dog, she's actually a little further along than he
Okay.
is. So I
Mhm.
wonder if sometimes his howling kind of
Mhm.
gets her going.
Yes, I was wondering about that because usually the worst dog is the one they role model, not the best dog. Does he chew? Does he chew?
He does, but he won't chew a thing while I'm gone. He won't eat
When
a
they
paw.
panic, yeah.
Won't.
He needs to. I get them so addicted to chewing while I'm there and then I take it away while I'm there and only do it when I'm gone. And there are dogs that are just literally so medically overwhelmed that they can't eat or chew while you're gone. So that is exposure therapy. That is Adaptil, Collar, Thunder Shirts medicine. That is finding out whether it's a covered place on the bed, leaving them somewhere where they really feel comfortable. Sights, sounds, different sights and sounds, checking in on them, not leaving them so long that they're completely over threshold.
Threshold, yeah.
Yeah, but I'd really focus on trying to get him to chew while you're around to the point where he's a chewaholic, and then you start doing it in the exposure therapy only, not when you actually leave, because that poisons the food. And
Right.
then it's like, I won't touch it. And then, like, I've had dogs that won't eat or drink until I come home, and they will only drink water when I come home. So I've had dogs that are like, will not drink water when I'm gone for 8 hours. So I definitely know how bad it can be. Obviously, I take in dogs that go through drywall or will escape out of a 2-story building or whatever, because they just panic and they will throw themselves or destroy a wall. So I've seen really, really severe stuff. It's not a fun thing at all. It's very difficult for them. And sometimes the worst cases, it's either euthanized. I'm talking about the worst cases where they're smashing through a window, going out on a roof, or they'll destroy their teeth and bleeding, and they're going to be with somebody until it gets in the system, or it's just cruel.
Marnie, I think your sound.
Oh no! Technical issue again.
Oh, we can hear you. You got really tinny.
Oh
As
dear.
if you were. There you go. You're good. You're good.
I have a spot that goes in and out, but my kids are decorating downstairs, and I've been told to stay in my room tonight, so I'm not allowed at my best spot reception.
The thing with mine is I'm grateful that they're just very vocal. They just howl, don't destroy anything in the house.
Good. That's good.
Yeah, different
That's
quality.
really good.
I think
Yes.
if that
Yes.
were. But I've been able to manage it, and I've used a lot of dog sitters.
That's good. That's good.
Well,
Mhm.
exposure therapy, I
Yes.
was leave them alone at all.
Yes, it's that tough sometimes. It really is. But vocal's better than distraction. But they get really into their own voices. They get absolutely addicted to their own voice, and oh my gosh. So I do use a lot of sniffing. I'll hide things around the place and give them stuff to find, to just sniff and find, even if they're not chewing or eating it, just stuff to track. I make sure they've had enough exercise when they go. I make sure I'm pay to settle and pay for quiet. If you start paying for quiet and paying for settle, that you'll see a little bit of difference with that, I think. Thundershells, Adaptil collars, Adaptil diffusers.
I do use Adaptil diffuser.
Oil.
I don't know if that's really helped or not, but I figure it can.
Yes, fat. I forgot to mention fat. I'm so glad we talked about this. Stress in dogs is often a lack of fat in the body. There's a beautiful book by Dr. Becker called Forever Dog, and that is changing the diet can change separation anxiety. I'll put a dog on raw for, serious behavior problems, or like different versions of like Dr. Harvey's cooked for. I'll find the diet that works for that dog when we've got a real problem, because food counts, and some dogs that with anxiety can't handle chemicals. They're very sensitive.
So wait, can you say more about that? They need more fat in their diet? Or a different type of stressed?
Yeah, there's CBD oil in humans works really well because there's a receptor in humans. I'm not sure how well it works in dogs, but I have seen it work in dogs. But I changed the oils. You're supposed to use a different fat source, so coconut oil, butter, olive oil, vegetable oil, whatever. I'll just change it. I'll change the fat source, a lard, whatever it is. I'll change the fat source, and salmon oil I'll add in, and I change the fat source. But there's stress receptors that are deprived of fat, and it can increase the stress in the body. But there's a book by a vet called Forever Dog, and she's got more on that.
That is fascinating. Well, let's see. We're close to time. There are two other things in the chat. Let's see if we can quickly address those. And one was from Megan. And Megan, are you the person who was possibly who met Casanandra on the street the other day? I suspect you may be, but you're adopting a different dog if you're the same Megan.
Hi, that was me. Yeah.
Hi, I live down the street. Christine and I both know Casanandra. We're friends with Jody. Anyways, that's a sidebar.
Oh, cool.
But
We're
great to hear
neighbors.
you're adopting. Yes, we're other Baltimore Fosters. So can you, Marnie, Megan asked about any other book recommendations for training. And then Jean had one other question related to being her very skinny, underfed foster, maybe about trying to, I guess, steal food. If you want to, you can ask that verbally too. Maybe we could just address those two and then wind down.
Okay, so for book recommendations, the book that changed my life was Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. That is the best book. The other one is Culture Clash. I think it's by Donaldson, but Culture Clash, Jean Donaldson. Puppy culture online, puppy culture. Even if it's too late in life and you've got an adult, it is the most important thing to learn around dogs is puppy culture. How dogs learn, how to develop and different stimulation and different stuff to interact with is life-changing for dogs. And often these pups that we get in rescue, they haven't had it. So I do it regardless. Puppy culture protocol is something I try and do regardless. Sorry, the next question, Irene, you had was after the book question was back to the foster.
It was another one from Jean. Jean, do you want
to?
Sure.
When I'm starting to prepare my meal, Naya actually is frantic, if I, have a plate or anything. She just wants food so badly after being starved. And she's always like searching for food. Even when I'm walking through my garage to take her out, she's wanting to look and try and find food just anywhere.
Yes, and it's that chemical response. These behaviors are the ones that are the worst, that they've been tied with the chemical, obviously, of starvation and hunger and not knowing where it's coming from. So I would walk her away with treats. I would walk up to her, a drop treat. I would ignore the distress. I wouldn't talk to her or verbalize when she's having it, like begging and mugging you. I walk away and I drop something for them, or I feed them when I'm prepping. I make sure that while I'm prepping, I've got baby gates or X pens around me so they can't mug me, but I will walk over and just drop it without paying attention to them. When I see any calm, I walk over and I feed. I would start feeding her when she's not begging, and I would get that on a routine. But I'm really disciplined about that because I've lived with 30 dogs a day, and you can't mess about when you're trying to work with that many dogs. I've like really had to dial it down to what works, and I don't mess around. I pay for calm behaviors because I've got dogs everywhere in every surface, so they have to be calm. Otherwise I would never get anything done. They have to go out better than they came in. I'm sending them back, so they have to be good at home. So I just get people to pay attention to when they're calm, start feeding her when she's calm, start adding treats, and start removing yourself. There's got to be a consequence to that panic. You know she's fed. Add in some oil, make sure that that's getting satiated in the chemical receptors in her body, that she's getting that fat. Just a little bit, it doesn't need to be a lot.
Yeah, she's getting coconut oil in the morning with probiotics.
Perfect. I love coconut oil. But I do change the fat source sometimes. I will do a little butter one week. I will do some fish oil, because it changes the satiation level of the dog. But just make sure when you're prepping food that, you know, when she starts panicking, you either remove yourself, remove the dog, and go put a little meal or puzzle toys, snuffle mat, Kong with cottage cheese, something to occupy her, a babysitter, so that behavior isn't escalating because it's associated with a deep chemical trauma. It's a traumatic response. Leave it, Annalise. I don't know what you're doing, but that doesn't look like a sanctioned activity. Right.
Thank you. That's helpful.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, thank you, Marnie. We are
Thank you, everybody.
few minutes past the hour, and so maybe we'll wind down at this point.
Thank you,
Keep to
Simone.
time. And we can take, sorry, Marnie is available, you know, you can email, I guess it's training@ophrescue.org to be connected to Marnie or one of the other trainers, if there are additional training needs. And I did put in the chat the link to all of these training videos where this one will go. And we need to remember to post that on Facebook, since it's not always easy to find later, but we do have, again, a kind of a library of these calls on different topics that we keep adding to. That is a very cute dog, I gotta say. So I think we will stop now, unless there's any final things, but thank you so much, Marnie. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to everyone who had a dog on the call that we could look at, because that adds to the value of these calls as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Happy holidays, everybody.
All right.
you.
Same to you. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Happy
Good night.
holidays. Bye.